It's Only Sport with Martin Devlin on the platform. Brought to you by One New Zealand. Let's get connected.
Apologise to me!
Mark Watson joins us here on the ATM podcast, episode 102. Usually, of course, Martin Devlin hosting this. Today, though, he's a little bit unwell, so producer Lachlan Waugh steps up to the plate. Watto, welcome. We've got the All Blacks, we've got the Black Caps, we've got Liverpool, Manchester United, some Black Ferns as well if we have time. First off with the All Blacks, 33-13 winners over the Wallabies over the weekend. Did we learn anything new after that game?
Oh, look, I think you're seeing the All Blacks. I still think there has been an evolution. How great is this Wallabies team? Well, I think it's an improved Wallabies team under Joe Schmidt, and I think in a couple of years' time, I think they will be a genuine threat. I think he is developing some depth. We got off to a bit of a slow start, which is not uncommon for All Black teams. But I think once we saw the try to Sevu Reece, and then you sort of Will Jordan, I sort of felt that we were never going to lose that game. And good to see Tossie coming off the bench, good to see Armour coming off the bench, and I think we are starting to develop that group of players that can come on and hopefully close out the last 20 minutes, which clearly has been the big talking point all season. Look, I think going into the Northern Hemisphere tour, Lachlan, do we still know who our starting 9 is? Do we still know who our starting 10 is? Are we all convinced on who our 12-13 combination are? I think Will Jordan cemented himself as our starting fullback. And then again, the mix of the loose forward trio. So through 9 tests, I still think there are a lot of really unanswered questions. Now, I'm happy to give Scott Robertson and his coaching group and these guys some room, but this can't roll over into next year. Next year, we need to be winning everything. We can't just be winning, look, we're still building, we're still developing, we're still finding our way. I don't want to hear that Rugby World Cup ever come into it, because that's just a default setting for making excuses and, we're building well towards the World Cup. That's putting all our eggs in the basket once every 4 years. But look, I thought it was the best game I'd seen from Beauden Barrett for a long time.
Yep.
Didn't aimlessly kick possession away. You could see that he took the ball to the line. You could see at times he thought about kicking. And then in that split decision to try to either carry or pass, and sometimes vice versa. And that was really, really nice to see, because I haven't been convinced on Beauden Barrett and really probably for the last 4 or 5 years, but probably because he's been shifted around so much. Look, the big questions, aren't they? And they've been discussed as TJ Perenara going the end of the year tour, does Sam Cane go, or do we use it as an opportunity to maybe bring someone else through?
Yeah, it's a funny one. I mean, because this year reminds me a lot of 2009, actually, Watto, where the results weren't great. We clearly weren't the best team in the world. But if we go back to then, I remember Dan Carter had a stint in France, and then he came back. But we had the bones of a team. We had sort of key positions sorted, it felt, assuming everyone was healthy and in relatively good form. And as much as there's some really good young players that have come through this year, you brought up Basilio Tossi. Wallace Atiti's been superb at blindside, even though that's supposedly not his best position. We still don't have, our best 15. We don't have those key players. I mean, the halfback, you're right. I mean, I guess it's Roy Gard, but we're basing that off what we saw last year and to start Super Rugby. I mean, he's coming back from a long injury layoff. Beauden Barrett might be the short-term answer at 10, but he's getting older. He's not going to be around for too long, and we need to find that 10 of the future. That's one thing that concerns me. I think it's those key positions, 9, 10, 7, 15 we've found, but those key positions, I think we're still lacking our long-term option.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And I mean, you talk about Roy Gard, but he's still a very, very inexperienced halfback. Yeah. I mean, I'd argue Cortez Ratama might have played more tests now than possibly Roy Gard. And then you go back to Noah Hotham and you go, boy, I tell you what, if one of those guys was to fall over, they talk about experience. I think experience in key positions. I think we've got enough halfback options. It's just who starts, who comes off the bench, and those things need to be locked in. This needs to be, they need to be in there. They might not necessarily go public with it, but I'd like to think heading towards Ireland, France, and England, they now know who their halfback is going to start the test and who their first 5 is, and you'd like to think it's Beauden Barrett. Yeah, it's does Harry Plummer, I mean, do we underrate that guy? He's sort of an uncanny sort of bloke, isn't he? He's been sort of a little bit of a journeyman, I guess, and maybe that's been a bit unfair. And then I think he really stepped up this year for the Blues. Is he, a little bit more of a percentage footballer? Is he the type of guy that you do want to have as your backup 10? Because I think Damien McKenzie proved that he's very, very effective coming off the bench. But the big question marks for me still are our midfield. I'm not convinced on Geordie Barrett, never been convinced on Rieko Ioane. And I think we've missed a beat. I thought it was a perfect opportunity for Billy Proctor to have a crack on the weekend. And as I said it all year, I just think Scott Robertson's been really jittery. He's just been so concerned at not losing that maybe he's just, I don't know, he's just sort of curled up into his shell a little bit. And he just needs to find the Scott Robertson himself. He just needs to come out and express himself. But I think with the loss to Argentina, the loss to Argentina has changed things. He does not want to go to the Northern Hemisphere and drop 2 out of 3 tests against those top sides. It would be a very, very failed season. And I think for those reasons, I think he'll take experience, and I'm not sure that we'll see too much development.
Yeah, there's been a lot of rumblings in the media that questioning do Kane and Perinari get taken, and almost suggesting that these journos writing these articles might have an idea of, or might have some inside info or some oil that actually these guys probably aren't going. I'd be shocked if Sam Kane's not taken, for example, because who's playing open side ahead of that guy? If it's Dalton or Luke Jacobson, I don't think those guys are in better form, and Ethan Blackadder for me should be playing probably 6, but that's just my opinion. But I'd be shocked if Kane, for example, is not taken.
Well, but isn't that then the perfect opportunity to play Artie at 7, bring Wallace Satiti in at 8, imagine Satiti off the back of the scrum, and then play Blackadder at 6? And I actually think that's a really good loose forward trio. I actually think that's a pretty solid loose forward trio, and then that gives you still the likes of Jacobson, Papali'i, and some of these other players. But the other option for me is, take Peter Lakai. Why not take Peter Lakai? We've got to develop a good quality 7. The guy's been superb in NPC in the last couple of seasons. Brilliant season for the Hurricanes. Do you leave Sam Cane at home and take Lakai? I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? Knowing that, Sam Cane brings leadership and he's great for the environment and all of that. But do we need to have one eye on the future?
Apologise to me!
Let's stick with Rugby Watto, but move on to the Black Ferns. This team's in a bit of a strange spot because, of course, they won the World Cup a couple of years ago. We're being told that this team is growing, getting better. They're taking over rugby. They're going to be bigger than the All Blacks one day, and then results haven't been so good since. Losing to England, you can understand because they are a step ahead of us, and even France last year when we lost to them as well. But now losing to Ireland, alarm bells starting to ring a bit, I think, for this team.
Oh, look, I think you just summed it up. I think the reason with this, and I say this around the White Ferns for the cricket, I think there's too much hype around them. They've been elevated to a level of, say, the All Blacks. They've been given that celebrity status. They've been made to believe that their achievements and their results are on par with the All Blacks. There's been ridiculous statements made from the likes of Phil Gifford and stuff over the years that have said, this is the future of the game. And to me, it's just virtue signalling. It's just everybody wanting to be seen to say the right thing. I just think a lot of it's gone to their heads. I think a lot of it, they honestly believe in all of this. And they dropped the ball big time against Ireland. That is a test we should have won. It's easy, isn't it? You look at the women's game and just automatically think that the same rivalries that are in the men's game will exist in the women's game. But when you actually look at Australia, are woeful. Wales are pretty damn average. And Ireland historically are average. It's not Ireland versus the All Blacks in the men's game. And I just think these women's sports just need to take a step back. The media need to take a step back, not elevate them to unrealistic levels, because I just don't think a lot of these athletes are mature enough to maybe take a look in the mirror and go, actually, look, it's all very nice, but we're not actually on that status. We're not actually at that same level. But they're told that they are, and I think they're believing a lot of their own press at the moment. Not dissimilar to what I think we saw with the Warriors this year. I think they believed their own press at the start of the season, and I think that was part of the reason for the drop off in form.
Let's move on to the Black Caps, Watto. That first test was a loss against Sri Lanka, but there were good signs out of it. This second test, anything but good signs.
No, and look, I was speaking to Garth Galloway the other day on my radio program. Garth, cricket commentator these days, son of the great Ian Galloway. And what I like about Garth is he's not afraid to have an opinion. And we had a really interesting chat. And look, he came up with a really good point. He said, look, this is no longer a team. This just feels like a club where basically, the captain and the coach pick the starting 11 and you go running through some of the statistics, you take Patel, who back in 2021 took 10 wickets. I think since then, he's basically only played about 2 tests. Then you take a guy like Mitch Santner, who has played 28 tests. He's taken only 54 wickets. In the last 28 tests, or in those 28 tests, his best figures are 3 for 34. Then you go and have a look at Ajaz Patel, in fact, who has played just 18 tests out of those 45. And you go, how come Santner constantly gets into the side and is so ineffective, yet Ajaz Patel is not? And I think you've got to look hard at the selectors. I think Sam Wells is one of the selectors. Southey, since January 2023, 13 tests, 32 wickets at an average of 39. And you look at Matt Henry, can't even find a place in this side. He's played 8 tests, taken 40 wickets at an average of 23. Against Australia, 5 for 70, 3 for 36, 7 for 67. 2 for 94, yet can't find a place in this side. Yeah. It's just, again, the tail wagging the dog. There just doesn't seem to be, there's no jeopardy, there is no accountability, and there's no adversity.
Yeah,
but the big one for me is Southey,
Yeah, you're right. There's not been much penalty for poor form, and there's been so much conservativeness in terms of making cuts to the team, essentially. Why that is not too sure. For Mitchell Santner, I can only assume that because he's really good mates with Kane Williams, and that's why he keeps getting into the team.
But that's exactly it. Yeah. But they've got to be more ruthless. I mean, look how ruthless the Australians can be at times. Look how ruthless the All Blacks can be. We've got to get ruthless. This has actually got to be a team. This is not a club, mate. This is actually a national side. And you've got to have players pushing in the background. You've got to have players competing. You've got to have players looking over their shoulder going, I need to be the best I can, or this guy's going to take my place. And that's not the case. I mean, Tim Southey's going to play against England. Tim Southey's going to go out on his own terms. Tim Southey's going to play another 15 tests to try and find 15 odd wickets to try and get through to 400. This is around Tim Southey making 400. Look, Tim Southey's passed his bet. Unfortunately for Tim Southey, in a ruthless environment, he's not going to get to 400 test wickets. He's going to come up slightly short, but it doesn't work that way. He's a pop gun bowler at the moment. And I just think Gary Stead's not the right guy, far too conservative, but just the build up to these series, the build up to the T20 Cricket World Cup, the Players Association in the background, players not wanting central contracts, but still getting picked. I mean, the whole thing is just an absolute shambles. Playing for your country should be about playing for us. It should be the pinnacle of what you do, money or no money. But for some reason, I don't know, that's just lost on these guys. I just think life's too easy for them.
Apologise to me!
Let's move on to some football finally, Watto. We'll talk about Liverpool in a sec, but I do want to talk about Man United with that 3-0 loss to Tottenham, because Erik ten Hag again in the firing line. But again, the club coming out this morning and saying he's safe at least for the next 2 matches. What do you make of this? I'd think that I don't like this play. I'm not a Man United fan, so I really don't care. But I hate this playing group because there have been so many blokes in that Man United team for so long who have burnt through managers, and they themselves don't seem to get penalised. And one of those guys, Diogo Dalot, was appalling yesterday. But at the same time, Erik ten Hag's been there for a couple of years now. He's spent a lot of money, and the results haven't gotten any better.
No, look, he's gone, isn't he? He's not going to survive. He's just simply not going to survive the next couple of weeks. Manchester United are not going to improve. They're still going to come up short. They're still going to have a very average season. They're going to finish mid-table. But then you do have to ask questions, the likes of Bruno Fernandes, Marcus Rashford, some of these players that have been in this setup for a long time, and do have to question why they're still in this particular team. I mean, look, as a Liverpool fan, I really don't care. I mean, I wish Manchester United bad things. I do. They hate us. We hate them.
Yeah.
And I've got, I'm sick and tired of hearing about, back in the day and everything they achieved in the 1990s and the ridicule they put Liverpool through. It took us 30 years to win the league again, or to win the Premier League, and at least we won trophies in between. But but there's also a part of me too. Manchester United are arguably, the biggest or most famous club in the world. Spanish clubs might argue that. And you probably want a competitive Manchester United, but until I think they sort out their backroom, until I think they just have a bit of a clean out and take a 5-year approach and just be realistic about it, Jurgen Klopp, it took time, didn't it, for Jurgen Klopp to put in place what he's put in place at Liverpool, and really starting to reap the rewards of it, and there seems to be a genuine succession plan. But yeah, Ten Hag will go. I still don't. I thought Tottenham Hotspur were brilliant. I mean, I think they've been actually very, very good in recent weeks and probably could have scored a lot more goals than they have.
Oh, they should have, yeah.
But,
At least you said they
as the season goes on, we were talking about it off here. I mean, you got Liverpool playing another Champions League match against Bologna in the next couple of days, and there's going to be a game pretty much 2 games a week going forward for most of these top sides, including Spurs, including United. When you look at the different European trophies, when you look at the Carabao Cup, when you look at the FA Cup, you look at the Premier League, and I think where the likes of Erik ten Hag and Ange Postecoglou will come undone is the lack of depth in their squad, how they rotate their squad, and if injuries do occur. And based on that, I'm actually pretty excited with how our mob, Liverpool, might just end up going and how we're actually tracking. Because I think when you look at the Liverpool team at the moment, we do have depth. We do have a very, very good bench to go to.
Yeah, we're a bit thin in defence is probably the only thing. But, I think you're right. I mean, people have talked for a couple of years about Liverpool, about the midfield, and they don't have the cattle there. But, we've got Curtis Jones back from injury. Ryan Gravenberch is almost a new signing because he's turned up into probably our best player so far this year. And then, of course, up front, we've got about 6 guys now who can fit in 3 positions with the Italian Chiesa coming on board. But no, I think like myself, you sound pretty pleased with Liverpool's start to the season.
Oh, I think they've been brilliant. I just think it's been, it's onslaught. I think he's just come in. He hasn't he doesn't have the personality that perhaps Jurgen Klopp has, but he's a wonderful analyst. I've heard Sir Kenny Dalglish just rave about this guy, saying, hey, look, we've actually got someone really, really special here. I know for a fact that Spurs did look at him a few years ago and didn't end up signing him. But, yeah, I mean, you just go through, got Chiesa, Endo, Gakpo, Gomez, Curtis Jones, Kelleher, Tsimikas. I mean, Bradley, that was just the bench. And then you run through Robertson, Van Dijk, Kanate, Alexander-Arnold, McAllister, Gravenberch. I mean, Diaz, Zoboslai. It's just a hell of a side, isn't it, really? Look, I'm excited. I was concerned. It's never easy coming off the back of a great manager, as Moyes discovered, having to come in after Sir Alex Ferguson. But the difference is, I think Sir Alex Ferguson didn't leave a great squad. Jurgen Klopp did the right thing. Not only did he get out with grace and class, he left the club in a better place than when he started at the club. And I think that's quality of the man.
Devlin.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
The Platform. It's only sport with Martin Devlin on The Platform. Brought to you by One New Zealand. Let's get connected.